Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I just got back from Houston, Texas to a wonderfully cold Wisconsin. We've got a whole pile of snow. It's 0 degrees out right now. So I figured I would do a little bit of a video about why I was in Houston. A few months ago, Berkley reached out to a bunch of the pro staff and said, hey, we're going to be putting on a big release event for some new baits that will be coming out middle of January. We want you to come down. We're inviting a bunch of media people. There's going to be a bunch of Berkley employees. And we're going to have a big release event at Nassau to talk about some of these new baits. And it was an amazing experience. There were probably about a dozen pros. There were a whole pile of Berkley employees there. And then there was a whole bunch of media representatives. Everything from fellow YouTubers to writers to a little bit of everything, but pretty much the who's who in the industry. And it was fantastic being able to meet a bunch of people that you kind of know by name and you know by the product that they put out, but you've never actually met them. And had just a great time talking to other industry people. But the highlight of the show really were the new baits that Berkley came out with. So I wanted to kind of talk about a few of them. If you watch my channel on a regular basis, you may have seen yesterday's video where this guy was the star. This is the Berkley finisher. This is one of those baits that they released. So there's 3 baits that they released. One of them is this guy right here, the power switch. This has actually been out for a few months now. So it's not a brand new bait compared to the release. Whereas the finisher has been really kept on the down low. And then the Krej 100 right here, this guy has also been kept on the down low. So I've been fortunate enough to be testing all of these baits from, I'm going to say, August or September. Some of the Berkley developers reached out, said, hey, we want to send you some baits. We want you to put them to the test. Let us know what you think. I haven't been able to talk about these baits until now. But I got to tell you, I'm extremely impressed. You know, the first thing, we'll just jump right into these 3 baits. So the first one, let's talk about the Krej. So the Krej is getting a ton of exposure right now on social media because of how different it is. You know, it's very clear here. You can see it's got an upward turned bill. Krej is jerk backwards, so it's kind of like a jerk bait backwards. So if you turned it this way, it would look more like a traditional jerk bait. But it's an extremely unique bait. And all of these baits, all 3 of these, they're calling FFS optimized. So that's forward-facing sonar optimized. Now, before all of you jump off and say these baits are made for forward-facing sonar, they're made to be utilized with forward-facing sonar in terms of they're baits that will help you catch those fish that you're seeing on the screen. But without a doubt, these baits work without forward-facing sonar. And what I mean by that is, you can take these out and catch fish in the traditional places you would be fishing a jerk bait or a bottom bouncing bait or a lipless crankbait. And I'll talk about each of these. But just because they're called FFS optimized, what that really means is it's a bait that's going to help you catch those fish that you're seeing on the screen. They're baits that will work well in terms of trying to catch some of those suspended fish versus like showing up better. Berkley's approach here, or attempt here, is not necessarily to make baits that show up better on the screen. They're making baits that will catch the fish that you're seeing on the screen. That's what optimized really means here. But by all means, you can catch fish without having forward-facing sonar, which is what I did in the video that came out yesterday. And I'll link that to the end of this video if you want to go back and watch me show you how to fish the finisher. But the Krej here is a jerkbait body. It's got the upward turned lip. So the question is, how is this different? What does this do? Well, it's a sinking bait. So this bait will actually sink versus being a jerkbait that works down to a suspended level. What that does is it allows you to fish from the surface all the way down to however deep that you want to fish it. The cool thing is when this bait falls, it falls like a spy bait. So it actually shimmies, like wiggles on the way down. Really unique movement that generates a lot of strikes. But that's just one thing that's cool about it. So the other is, because of the upward turned lip, the bait the bait will actually rise as you work it. The key there is, and this is something that a lot of ice fishermen have known for a long time, generally speaking, you want to keep your bait above the fish. One problem with a lot of baits is when you work the bait, they want to dive deeper. So, for example, if you're fishing forward facing sonar and you see a fish out there, this bait allows you to keep it above the fish. So, as you're working it, you can actually work it towards the surface. Now, the cool thing with that is a lot of fish will follow your bait as you get closer to the surface. Once this gets to the surface, that's where the fish are actually going to attack it because they use the surface of the water as a ceiling, right? They can push the bait up to the surface. That's where they bite it. So you can, similar to ice fishing, you can tease the fish up to the surface. And when I say up, it's not like it comes straight at the angler. It will rise pretty much, not vertical, but very close to it. It rises very quickly. So if you have a fish that's following it, you can actually bring them to the surface, which is where a lot of those strikes will occur. The cool thing with this, though, is you can drop your rod tip, give the bait slack, and when it falls, it doesn't fall just straight vertical. It actually backslides at like a 45-degree angle. So for me, as an example, one thing that I was doing to catch a lot of fish in the summer is I was fishing a lake that had a bunch of flats in, say, the 10 to 14 foot range. And on those flats, I had big boulders and I had big isolated weed clumps. And I could cast past those objects, bring them up to the object, fishing it kind of like a jerkbait. Once you get it down to the depth that you want, you can twitch it and get it to look just like a jerkbait. But then when I got right to the back side of that boulder or that weed clump, I could retrieve it, rise it up to the top, and then if I didn't engage a fish at that point, I could drop it and it would backslide down to the backside of that boulder or that weed clump. And I could almost vertical jig it on the backside. And a lot of times what that did is that's what got those fish that may have been a little bit more lethargic to finally commit. So it's almost like I could, in a way, vertical jig it a long ways away from the boat. And that's what we mean by like the FFS optimized. Because I can see where my bait is at, I can work it around a piece of structure that's further away from the boat. Unlike any other bait, I couldn't do that with, say, a jerk bait. So there's a lot of really cool features here, from the shimmy on the fall, to the fact that it backslides away from you at a 45-degree angle, to the fact that it rises to the surface. If you want to retrieve it up to the surface, you can even work them similar to a topwater bait to get those fish to fully commit. But it's a really unique bait. It's a cool bait to use. It's totally different than anything else that I'm familiar with on the market. And I had a lot of good luck. Now I will say I only had one of these back in August or September. Caught a bunch of big smallmouth on it and then got bit off by a pike. So I didn't have it. I haven't experimented a ton with it. It is a bait where you're going to have to figure out the best way to use it. The way your rod tip movements will make the bait move. So there is a little bit of user experience that needs to go into this, but there are a lot of cool things you can do with it. And it opens up a lot of different techniques or a lot of different presentations to individual fish. But I see this being a major player for a while to come. I think you'll see probably Berkley come out. This is all my assumption. I would probably think we might see bigger versions, smaller versions. But I think this will be around for quite some time. Definitely a cool bait that they released. And it's one, I'm kind of surprised they were able to keep these on the down low, to be honest with you. A lot of times baits get out there, but in this case, everyone really kept their mouth shut, and they're really unique. So the Krej, by the way, too, there's one size, the Krej 100. This bait is 100 millimeters long and it weighs a ½ ounce. So it sinks quickly, but not like a rock by any means. But you can fish lots of different water depths with it. So the video that I put out yesterday with this guy right here, this is the finisher size. So this is the other main bait that they released there. The finisher comes in 3 different sizes. You've got a 5, 7, and a 9. The 5 is a 1/3 ounce, 2-inch long. The 7 is a ½ ounce, 2 3/4 inch long, and the 9 is 3/4 ounce and it's 3.5 inches long. So these baits are heavier, and therefore you can fish them really well at many different depths. I've caught fish down to 25 feet, and I've caught fish in 3 or 4 feet of water out of it. But it does fall much quicker when you drop your rod tip or let it fall. Now, the cool thing with this bait, and really what stands out the most to me, is the darting motion. This bait, when you snap your rod tip, and I say snap, I'm not talking like hitting it hard, just nice little pops. This bait will shoot all over the place in 3 or 4 foot glides. Sometimes it might come forward. Next time it might go backwards. It might go left or right. You can get this bait to almost hover in place because it's just zigzagging all over the place at a certain depth. And that is the key, in my opinion, to this bait. It creates reaction strikes because of how fast it moves. It's one of those baits, you blink your eyes and it's over here. You snap the rod tip, you blink your eyes, it's over here. That extreme quickness of this bait is what generates those strikes from the fish. You know, there's very few baits out there where we can get them to move with the speed of the actual fish in the water. Meaning, you know, if you saw a little minnow and you tried to grab it like that, they're gone. You know, from that standpoint, it's hard for us to mimic that speed. This bait does that, and that quick movement is what generates the strikes. Now, in that video, I show you how to fish it, how I've been using it to catch a lot of fish. But there's a lot of things that you can do with this. You know, to me, this is much more versatile than the Krej. And what I mean by that is you can let this bait go down to the bottom in 20 feet of water, and you can almost snap jig it off the bottom if you wanted to. You can fish it suspended like you are a jerkbait. You can fish it high up in the water column. There's a lot of different things to do with it. There's a lot of experimentation here that the anglers are going to be able to use on this bait to figure out what works best for them. I've caught everything from crappie, perch, largemouth, smallmouth, walleye, muskie, white bass. I've caught basically every game fish on this thing. So to me, it's really interesting to see. You know, the video I put out yesterday was catching largemouth in 40-degree water that were very, very lethargic fish and not willing to bite other baits, but this bait got them to bite. So that to me is exciting. I really expect this bait to be a player, both the Krej and this bait to be players in the first several tournaments of the year. There's a lot of events taking place on Toledo Bend and Sam Rayburn, places like that. I really expect to see it come into play. But the 3 sizes, all really good. You know, when you look at it, you go, well, it's a smaller bait. But I feel like that speed presentation actually helps the bait almost have a bigger appearance. But it also helps the fish get the entire bait when they do go to eat it. You know, if a bait was too big, they might, you know, miss the hooks at times. But most of my hookups on this have had the whole bait in the fish's mouth, so you know they're eating it really well. So I'm really excited for the finisher. A couple of things to note with this: when you drop it, it does have tail wiggle as well. So it does have some movement. Again, it's kind of got that flatter body that gives the bait a little bit of movement. So when you drop it, it's still moving. When you're snapping it, the bait's generally rolling as well as darting. So it's constantly moving. I think that's also one of the keys as to why it is so good. It's constantly moving, giving off some vibration, giving off signals to the fish that this is in that area, and presents itself as an opportunity for the fish to eat. So I'm really excited about that. I like the finisher better than the Krej. I know the Krej is getting a lot of the attention right now, but I think the finisher, to me, is going to fit more into my overall fishing style and be usable in a lot more situations. But I think both are fantastic. The third bait that was released is something that has been out for a little bit. This is a soft bait with a molded in jig head. It's the Power Switch. This has really similar motion to the finisher. When you snap it, the bait really darts side to side extremely quickly. Very good movement in the water. You've got some good soft tail movement out of it. Been generating a lot of strikes. So the Power Switch, I want to say it came out probably in, I'm going to say September. Could be off there. But it was kind of late summer, early fall. And I feel like it did not get the attention it deserved. But I can assure you, in the last couple months, this bait has become a major seller. People are buying it left and right. And that's because they're figuring out, one, how to use it, and two, how versatile it is and how good it is at generating those strikes. The neat thing too with this is it comes in lots of different sizes. This is the little 3-inch model, so this is the 3/8 ounce. And these are heavier, so these do get down deeper, and you can fish them really deep if you want to, but they come in different sizes. So this is the 3-inch model. I think they go up to a 5-inch size, and I think the small one is like 1.5 inches or 2 inches. It's a really little bait, but again, they're all pretty heavy for their size. The 5-inch model is like 1.25 ounces, I'd have to look, but it's a very heavy size. But because the bait falls, has a wider bottom and falls relatively upright, the bait doesn't sink as fast as you would think it would. Like this little bait being 3/8 of an ounce, you would think would fall like a rock, but it actually sits much more horizontal in the water, darts very well because of it. It just looks extremely natural in the water. Been catching fish really well for the last several months for the people that have been starting to use it. And I expect to hear a lot about this bait to come as well. Now, from a fishing standpoint, this is what I would consider more of that mid-strolling style bait. You know, it's a 90-degree jig hook. It's heavier, allows you to fish deeper in the water column, faster moving bait, faster falling bait. And because of that, you're going to be generally fishing this a little deeper in the water column. But it's, again, been absolutely crushing those fish that are sitting down in drains, sitting around standing timber, suspended out in the open water, catching a lot of fish. You know, again, forward-facing sonar optimized, but really what all of these baits are baits that are going to help you catch those fish. They're creating reaction strikes from those fish that you're seeing on your screens, and doesn't necessarily have anything to do with like just showing up better. To me, I don't care if a bait shows up well or not on my screens. I want to generate strikes from those fish. That's the key. That's what these baits are going to do. And I expect to hear a whole lot more from these over the coming year. I expect to see a lot of different styles of baits similar to these starting to come out. You know, I feel like Berkley opened up a can of worms with these, and it's going to create a lot of new thinking processes from other individuals out there. So all of these are available on Tackle Warehouse right now. The Power Switch you can order and receive. The Finisher and the Krej were shipped out, I think, on Friday. Tackle Warehouse is taking orders for them, and they're going to ship them in about a week. So if you want to get them, be the first to have them, put your order in right now, and then they'll ship them as soon as they're available. I think it says on the website like the 23rd or the 25th, so about a week out. But get your orders in now. You know, I'm not sure if there's a bunch more behind this or if this is like the first allotment and then they're going to be sold out for 2 months. I have no answers as to that. So all I could say is if these baits interest you, get your orders in now. I'll put links in the video description, and I'm excited for them. I'm very excited for these baits. I think they're going to be major players all over the country. And in a way, it was really cool to have them to myself, and I kind of want to keep them to myself. But I know that's not what we're going to do. And they're available to everyone right now. Anyways, guys, I'm going to get back. I got to go do some shoveling because I did get back to about 10 inches of snow. So I'm going to take care of that. We got the Packers game on here in a little bit, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of this weekend. I hope you guys do as well. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned. New video coming out tomorrow.